Die of the Dead is a 2 to 5 player game designed by James Allen and Mark Stockton-Pitt and due to be published by Radical 8 Games. It's the Day of the Dead, and players play as friendly spirits, helping to guide souls up the Marigold Steps to the land of the living. The first player to have one of their souls reach the village is the winner. I was lucky enough to get given a prototype of this game for preview purposes, but please note that because this is not the retail edition, anything you see in this video is not necessarily indicative of the final product.
Setting up the game is simple. First, construct the Marigold Steps and place it somewhere on the table. Lie the papel picado casket and token boards in their respective lines in the middle of the table. And above the casket tiles, place the 4 caskets themselves so that each one is above a different casket board. The lids are the bigger pieces, so make sure they are on top. But please be sure to leave the first casket without its lid on. Take all of the tokens and place them on or next to their matching token board. Give each player a set of coloured dice and a matching player board, and take each player's power souls, aka dice with the skull symbols on them, and place these in a column on the City of the Dead board. Each player rolls 2 of their regular dice to determine a first player with the highest number winning. Finally, check the instructions, as you will need to place some of the corresponding player's dice into the caskets and on their player boards based on what position they are playing in. This is to ensure fairness in the game, no matter whether you go first or last.
This game is quite easy to learn. On your turn you simply choose a casket, and then you do the action written on the casket board directly beneath it. Now, the caskets will move during the game quite a lot, but the casket boards will always remain in place, as the goal of the game is to ascend your souls, aka these dice, up onto the Marigold Steps, and the only way to do that is using this rightmost action. Getting your dice or caskets with your dice into that position is really the key to winning the game.
Movement in Die of the Dead is almost always in the same direction from left to right, and the end casket that is pushed out from such movement is brought back in to the first open position.
This game uses the following gameplay mechanisms: worker placement, memory, dice rolling, take that, and press your luck. Now I'm going to briefly describe each of these and how they are integrated into Die of the Dead. Given the refresh of mechanisms on BoardGameGeek's website recently, it does seem a little odd to classify this as a worker placement game, given that it doesn't meet several of the conditions that most people would identify with a worker placement, such as the actual placement of workers and the blocking off of spaces, but it does still seem the best fit that I could find. Here, the 4 caskets actually represent spaces that players can freely choose to use and benefit from. On your turn, you simply choose one, complete the said action, and then it's the next player's turn, and so on until the game ends. These actions are as follows.
The rightmost space, aka the 4th space, is the only way to win the game, as after rolling and revealing the dice as part of the action, the winning player may ascend up to 2 of their souls from this casket to the Marigold Steps. Ascended soul dice are placed in order from bottom to top, with only 1 of your own dice on each step. Depending on where they are placed, they can gain bonuses too. No matter who wins this roll-off, the active player can then either add a soul from this casket to the steps, move the caskets along 1 space, or instead gain an available power soul, which will be explained later. The 3rd space involves shaking and then comparing the resulting dice in the above casket. Looking at each player's dice separately, remove any duplicate results, making sure to leave at least 1 dice for each player, meaning a player will never lose all of their dice from this casket. Then, the active player gains a power token to be used and discarded when appropriate. The 2nd space allows you to prepare up to 2 souls on empty spaces on your player board. After that, the casket is shaken and the winning player gets to prepare a soul if they have space for one. If a 1 is rolled during this action, the caskets are moved along 1 space. Finally, the first action, for which the casket is always open, involves adding 1 free soul, aka 1 from your supply, or up to 3 prepared souls from your player board. If there are at least 2 players present in this casket, the casket is closed, shaken, and then revealed, and like the 2nd space, if a 1 is rolled, then the caskets move along 1 space.
Now this mechanism is pretty self-explanatory, as you'll try to remember where your and other players' dice are during the game as the caskets move around. Now with the game moving along at a decent pace and lots of moments of dexterity and movement to distract you, it is very likely, even with just 3 caskets closed, that you will lose track of what is where. Now this is actually a good thing, as the game wouldn't work nearly as well if nothing was hidden from view, meaning that all players had perfect information. Now technically you don't roll the dice here, instead you shake a box with the dice in, but the same principles of dice rolling exist here with elements of luck and limited mitigation. Now the dice represent souls, and in Die of the Dead all dice rolling is done to determine if either the caskets move, dice are removed from caskets, or to determine the winner by seeing who rolled the highest value in what I like to refer to as a roll-off.
In the case of a tie, this is broken first by checking for the total number of each player's dice showing that value, and then using the next highest value of their remaining dice, and so on until a winner is found or both players are declared the winners.
There is a slight thematic disjoint here, as it's not entirely clear what this represents thematically. However, the benefit of including this mechanism is that there is excitement whenever you have to roll during a crucial moment. And while there is obviously the downside of potentially being held back in the game through sheer bad luck, there's also the possibility that you might get really lucky when you ought to have lost too.
Mitigation of this luck can occur through the use of power souls, a normal dice but with the 3 and 4 sides replaced by a wild skull symbol.
So the result of a rolled skull symbol is up to that player, meaning that that player can help themselves to win a casket action or to force movement of the caskets depending on what is most advantageous to them at that moment. Now, in addition, I've always thought there is a relationship between how fun a game is, how much luck is involved, and how long the game takes. Meaning that if you want to enjoy playing a game that is very short, the amount of luck can be quite high, but also vice versa. And I feel like this game does tread the balance between those 3 things very carefully. Take That is a way of impacting your opponent's gameplay, usually through negative interaction or halting their progress, and this is a divisive mechanism in the gaming community. Here, it is used to force a casket filled with opponent's dice out of a beneficial position, to prevent it from getting to that position in the first place, or even from removing opponent's dice out of caskets.
This is done either by using casket actions as explained above, or using the power tokens. These tokens are the only way to add variability to the gameplay, as while the rest of the game remains the same during each playthrough, each token board is double-sided, and you can play with either side of each board. Mixing the sides up offers different strategies. For example, one of them allows you to add 1 soul to the first casket and remove an opponent's, while another allows you to shake a casket again after the results have been revealed.
Press Your Luck is a way of allowing risk versus reward in the game, usually in such a way that the bigger the risk you take, the bigger the reward on offer, potentially losing a lot of progress if it goes wrong.
This is integrated into the game in a couple of smaller ways. You may opt to keep loading up your dice into a single casket, which takes time but gives you better odds of winning any roll-offs, or you can spread your dice around but lower your chance of winning them, which is crucial to advancing towards the game's end. Additionally, thanks to the third space action, having a lot of dice there actually means it is risky, as any opposing player could choose to roll it, and it is more likely you will roll duplicate results and lose dice.
So that's all of the gameplay mechanisms and how they work, but there is something else I'd like to briefly discuss about this game: the theme and the aesthetics.
This game is based on the Mexican Day of the Dead holiday, or Dia de los Muertos, and as a result borrows heavily from that culture. Thankfully, a cultural consultant was hired to ensure the game remained faithful to its theme, and some changes were even inspired by their involvement. They also hired a wonderful Mexican artist called Russ to create the game's gorgeous aesthetic. This resulted in a memorable, striking-looking game that celebrates a unique part of Mexican history that has not been misrepresented or fetishized.
As this is a preview, my judgment on this game is not going to be fully representative of the final product, and I will not be giving a review score, but there is still a few thoughts I'd like to share based on my experiences playing the game so far. This game and its rules are easy to digest. Having played it with new players, they were able to grasp it fairly easily without asking too many questions, meaning that I can see this doing well with families, particularly ones who are, impressed with the game's look. And the look is also very much a positive here, which was the one thing that every player I played it with made a point of saying how great they found it. It also reminded me very much of one of my favourite games ever, which is a video game, Grim Fandango. There is a lot of gleeful joy here, making moves to stop someone from winning in this game, particularly if you know the way the game flows. And that in itself was a slight issue, as new players very much found it easy to learn the rules, but found it hard to grasp exactly how the systems worked within each other and how exactly to get their souls up onto the marigold steps. Also, because the casket boards and the token boards have the same colour set, there was confusion initially as to whether these colours were linked, when in actual fact they are not linked at all. An easy solution to this would be to change the colour sets in the final game, and this also had an effect with the similar but not quite the same colours of caskets. I think a variety of colour here would benefit the game and stop players from getting confused. Overall, this game feels like a very authentic take on its theme, with a very fun game underneath its surface. It has a nice mix of mechanics and sits nicely between a lighter family style game and a medium weight strategic game, so it kind of feels like it caters to both. And while it does have some minor issues, as I explained, they are certainly not insurmountable and could easily be rectified in preparation for the game's final edition. And I do hope I get to see that final edition and play it in its final form. The game is currently scheduled to launch on Kickstarter on August the 25th for the price of £27, though this is obviously subject to change. I really hope you enjoyed my preview for Die of the Dead by Radical 8 Games. If you did enjoy the content or found it useful, please consider subscribing to me on YouTube or giving a like or even a comment, as this will enable the channel to grow and potentially cover more games in the future. My name is Russell. I really hope you have a lovely day. Thanks for watching, and until next time, have fun gaming.